You can often use a biased question to shift onto a topic, so long as you then follow it up with good questions. If you are totally scared in every case of asking any biasing question in any way, you're like, it has to be 0% biased. What happens is you lose the ability to maneuver the conversation onto the topics that you care about. You have to be kind of forceful sometimes, like elbow people onto the topic that you care about, right? And then once you're on that topic, you can be a lot more careful about the information you're gathering there. And this is a really common pattern. It's like bias inducing topic change, but you kind of disregard the answer to that question because you were just shifting the topic, and then it's the follow-ups. In the example I have her saying, oh, like I didn't even buy most of those. Most of those were gifts. I don't buy any cookbooks, which is a mix of good data and bad data. Sometimes you get this. Like a lot of those were gifts is essentially a story from her life. It's like the story of how she came to have all these cookbooks. However, I hardly bought any of them. That's a generalization, so that's bad data. So I'm going to want to ask for stories to try to figure out where the dividing line is. Like, how true is that generalization? Where are the exceptions and edge cases? It's like, well, which ones of them did you buy? What's the last one that you did buy? I'm going to look for a concrete story or counterexample and try to carve out an understanding of which one she pays for and which one she doesn't. And I'm going to ask for other stories in that space. I'm going to try to get more examples until I like approached it from enough directions that I'm like, okay, I have a good mental model of her worldview, decision-making criteria in this domain. And then I'm going to do another topic shift onto my next learning goal, which again might be a little bias inducing because if you're trying to lead the conversation onto a new topic, it kind of by definition has to be leading. So it's not that 100% of your questions need to be perfect. It's that you need to leave the conversation with enough good data, which to me is concrete stories about what they're already doing and why, and what they're not doing and why not. So basically stories from their life. You want to leave the conversation with enough good data that is important, so it's relevant to your learning goals. And you want to push deep enough on each of those topics so that you've got a complete understanding of it. Sometimes you run out of time, but and you cobble it together across multiple different conversations rather than all from one giant big conversation. I see so many founders get stuck on it because they really want to like read the mom test and do their conversations perfectly. But it's not possible to have a perfectly unbiased conversation and also a perfect conversation, because for it to be perfectly unbiased, you need to be so uninvolved, basically saying nothing, steering the conversation nowhere, that you end up hearing a lot of unimportant top of mind trivia. You're not able to get into the deep, important strategic issues that are really going to drive your product and business decisions. So 0% bias is actually wrong. You don't want 100% bias. That's also very wrong. Like some percentage of your questions are going to have to be a little bit, quote, imperfect from like a pure bias research perspective, just to keep the conversation on track. I keep saying over and over as I'm writing the second edition, like pragmatic, not perfect, pragmatic, not perfect. It's about getting good enough data fast enough so that you can make the next set of decisions better than you would have otherwise. Ooh, is this leading? Is this bias? Like, well, think of it more pragmatically. Does it allow you to open up the topic that you care about? And then if so, can you ask unbiased follow-up questions to separate the wheat from the chaff? If so, you're probably okay. And this is another reason why we take notes and review the notes and or transcripts immediately after the meeting. Because as you look back at it, you'll still have a fresh memory of what was said and when and with what energy and in what way. And you can be like, oh, actually, like the response here about, how important it is, I'm just going to scratch that from the record. I'm going to delete this part. Ooh, but this story I heard afterwards, super valuable. It points me toward this insight or this question, and you sort of work through the material like that, which is the layered defense. It's like, avoid the bias if you can, but sometimes you can't. Then if it comes up anyway, try to fix it, try to, outmaneuver it, try to work around it. Sometimes you can't. And so if that's the case, then you look through your notes afterwards and you scratch it from the record, so that you don't end up making decisions based on bad data. That's kind of the necessity of a little bit of bias to guide the conversation toward the important learning goals that you care about. And, hopefully that gives a sense of what I mean when I say pragmatic over perfect.